Let us continue with our analysis of Elegy Risen in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray. We will be reading stanzas 20 to 23. And in these lines, the poet is talking about the inscriptions on the tombs of the poor people, the ordinary country folk. And he says that the rude inscriptions on their tombs show that they deserve to be remembered. The poet says, "Yet even these bones from insult to protect, some frail memorial still erected nigh, with uncouth rhymes and shapeless sculpture decked, implores the passing tribute of a sigh." Let us look at the meanings of some of the words. First, these bones refers to the remains of these poor peasants. Insult means desecration, and to protect is to protect the bones. Some frail memorial. Frail is perishable, and memorial is a monument. Erected nigh, raised near their homes. Uncouth rhymes refers to rude verses, and there's again a comparison to the tombs of the great. This is opposed to the elegant epitaphs engraved on the tombs of the rich and the great. Shapeless sculpture, some kind of rudely constructed statue. Again, this is opposed to the highly artistic statues placed over the tombs of the great. Sculpture, though abstract, is here used as a concrete noun, meaning the art of making statues used for the statues themselves. Decked means adorned. Adorned has a special meaning here. It means marked with or characterized by. Implores the passing tribute of a sigh. Implores, solicits. That is the simple inscriptions on the tombs. They also solicit a passing, a brief tribute. Something paid to honor the memory of the dead. Implores the passing tribute of a sigh. Sigh is an expression of sorrow or sympathy. So the poet says that though they have no stately tombs and though their lives were most obscure, there is nevertheless some kind of humble monument raised over their tombs in the neighborhood of their homes. Though made of perishable material and bearing only a rude inscription and a rude effigy, such a monument is intended to evoke a brief feeling of sympathy from the passer-by. The writer continues and says, "Their name, their years, spelt by the unlettered muse, the place of fame and elegy supply, and many a holy text round she strews, that teach the rustic moralist to die." And in these lines, the poet tells us as to what is inscribed on the tombstones. Their years. The years refers to the date of their birth and the date of their death. It can even be interpreted as their age at the time of death. Spelled by the unlettered muse. Composed by some uneducated versifier. Dr. Bradshaw has offered the following note to this line. Gray had probably in mind that under the yew tree there is a tombstone with several words wrongly spelt and some letters ill-formed, and that even in the inscription which he composed for his aunt's tomb, the word resurrection is spelt incorrectly by the unlettered stone cutter. The place of fame and elegy supply are a substitute for the emblazoned epitaphs inscribed on the tombs of the rich, the great. The nominatives to supply are name and years and the object place. Holy text refers to the passage from the Bible. She refers to the goddess of poetry. Around means all about the monument. Strews means scatters. And the rustic moralist, the village peasant who desires to live a life of virtue and purity and simplicity, to die, how to die, like a pious man. So the poet says that instead of elaborate epitaphs such as are engraved on the tombs of the great, the tombs of these poor peasants have only a simple inscription giving their names and their ages at the time of death, with a number of passages from the Bible rudely engraved all about the monument. The inscription is obviously composed by some unlettered, uneducated versifier, for several words are incorrectly spelled, and the passages from the Bible selected for the inscription are such as serve to teach the village peasants how to die like a pious Christian. For who to dumb forgetfulness a prey, displeasing, anxious being ever resigned, left the warm precincts of the cheerful day, nor cast one longing, lingering look behind? Who? The word puts a rhetorical question, the answer to which is none. Dumb forgetfulness, total oblivion, vanishing from memory. A prey, a destined prey, doomed to be a victim. This pleasing, anxious being, there is an antithesis between pleasing and anxious. It means this life which is full of joys and also cares. Ever resigned, ever at any time. Resigned, surrendered. Left the warm precincts of the cheerful day. Left is quitted. The warm precincts of the cheerful day, life is spoken of as having warm precincts because everything surrounding life or associated with life is so pleasant and enjoyable, in contrast with the cold, narrow grave, which is an object of terror. Left the warm precincts of the cheerful day, passed beyond the farthest boundaries of life, that is died, nor did not cast one longing, lingering look behind. A wistful look, continuing to dwell on some object of fond desire, a look of eager desire, unwilling to withdraw itself from some beloved object. Behind, backward, that is, towards life as he leaves it. The poet says, the reason why there are monuments to mark the graves of even these poor people is that though all men are destined to be forgotten, every one craves to be remembered after death. No one departs from life, its joys and cares, without a wistful fond gaze on objects of love he is leaving after him. The poet further says, on some fond breast the parting soul relies, some pious drops the closing eye requires. Even from the tomb the voice of nature cries, even in our ashes live their wonted fires. Some fond breast, some loving person. Breast here means support. The parting soul, a dying person, relies, depends for support. Pious drops refers to tears of sympathy. The closing eye refers to a dying person. Requires, again, needs for comfort. That is, it gives some comfort to a dying man, a dying person, to see his friends and relations weeping for him. Even from the tomb, that is, even after a person is dead and buried, the voice of nature, the natural craving for loving remembrance, the instinctive desire to be remembered after death, in our ashes, when all is dust and ashes, live their wonted fires, live are perpetuated. The strong desire for remembrance which they always habitually entertained. The four expressions, parting soul, closing eye, the tomb, and ashes, form a kind of a climax. The first phrase announces the approach of death, the second, its actual arrival, the third, the time immediately after death, and the fourth, a long time after death, when the body has become dust and ashes in the grave. So the poet says, when dying, a person depends for support on some loving friends and needs the sympathy and sorrow of those who shed tears of devout affection at his death. Even after one is dead and buried, the same natural craving for loving remembrance continues. Nay, long after death, when the body has become dust and ashes in the grave, the passion for loving remembrance which they habitually entertained finds strong expression in the inscription on their tombs. So in these lines we see that the poet says that living as they did, aloof from the centers of busy life, they were people whose wishes were virtuous and whose lives were retired and peaceful. Nevertheless, there is some frail monument of these obscure people in the gravestones around to plead that they may not be quite forgotten. And these gravestones are simply inscribed with their names, their age, and a few biblical texts of a moral tone. But these gravestones of the poor show that they desire to be remembered after death, and that this desire is a desire common to all men.